All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of Township of Plymouth, May 28th, 2025. Public information. We're going to start with roll call. Councilor Bailey. Councilor Hurst. Present. Councilor Goida.
Present.
And Councilor Schools. Present. Any schools or pecuniary interest today? Great, seeing none. This public meeting involves an application for a major site alteration for 4670 Side Road 10 North, Township of Plymouth, County of Wellington. Purpose of the site alteration is to permit a total of 145,000 cubic meters of fill to be imported to the subject site to improve airability and drainage in support of ongoing efforts to convert a former gravel pit into a productive farmland. Specifically, the fill will include topsoil intended to enhance soil quality, thereby improving crop production and yield as indicated by the applicant. The applicant, please make their presentation. Sure. Welcome you down to the table. Evening. Good evening.
My name is Brian Enter. I'm an engineer with Meritech Engineering. I've been retained by Mr. Martinello. And I'd like to just go through some slides with you this evening, just explaining the project, some details, and obviously welcome any questions you have and answer them either now or later on if you have any. So thank you for your time and for opportunity to speak to you about the project. So I've been an engineer for almost 30 years, and I'm a civil engineer and have skills in just land development, grading, stormwater management, etc. So the application, just the presentation go through just to talk about the site location, the actual details of the project. I'll talk about the haul route, the involvement of qualified professionals that have been involved in getting to this point, as well as who will be involved following if the permit is approved, just managing the project and making sure that the design and the regulations and the bylaw requirements are actually adhered to. Talk about the import material, talk about the fact that construction can cause nuisance and what the mitigation measures would be for that. So just a proposal about operation hours. Then go through what the complaint protocols would be, and then just review some of the current work that's already happened and where we're at with review. So the application is at 4670 Side Road 10 North. As you can see on the site there, the general location. So the application is for a major site alteration permit, as they already heard. And yeah, I'm not here on behalf of the landowner making this presentation, some support for the application. The site location, as you can see here, is the red is the boundary of the actual property, approximately. And then the green zone is the area where the actual site alteration would happen. And as you can see, the design, and this mimics the engineering drawing that we've produced, is for the most part along most of the edges is suitably set back to provide a buffer from the adjacent development, from the property lines, from the Grand River Conservation Authority's regulation limits. So it's outside of that, and there's a setback from that. So that's the zone of which is essentially the former gravel pit area and to the limits of that extent. So the land is currently zoned agricultural, and there's no proposed change to that. The purpose of this is to restore that former gravel pit, which is no longer registered, to be used as that, so it can't be used for any more extraction. It hasn't been active for ages. The current, I understand the current soil conditions are poor. The topsoil that there is very gravelly, doesn't produce a high yield at all. And the main area, because of the fact that it was extracted, is relatively flat. And any proposed work then needs to have rework of the actual grading. So the proposal is to import topsoil. And in order to do that, first you bring in some base material. So associated, that has to be some grading. Right now it's relatively flat, but, we can't leave it that way for agricultural use, or it just ends up being a soggy soils. So, it's proposed to put in basically, the minimum, slopes in that to work from the top of the slopes of the existing areas that were, mined for the aggregate, and grade that out in a gentle manner towards the extent on the south end of the property. So the proposed import has, as I said, a suitable, base material, and we'll get into that when we talk about the actual soils that are allowed to be brought in for the regulations. And just in full disclosure, that in parallel with that has been a building permit application, which has already been approved for a pole barn, which is associated with the proposed farming use. And, there is, plans for a future house, which we, have been associated with relocating an existing septic bed and, showing some of those zones, and we were working with town staff as to where that exactly would be. The benefits of this proposed application is just, essentially to, increase the, arability of the soil and actually get some yield out of this land. So it's actually useful. Productivity is important. And also the fact that there's a lot of areas within the site because of the conversion from the gravel pit, which are still quite steep and aren't accessible for farmland. So regrading it will improve that. Also, as I already mentioned, the increased yield from the farmland with basically bringing in topsoil, which essentially is not there. To do that, the proposal is then to bring in 145,000 cubic meters. It's a large site, so it sounds like a large number, but it's also a very large site. And the anticipated completion period would go 2 to 3 construction seasons to complete that. Next picture is the proposed engineering grading plan. Pretty small font, so you can't really see a lot of the detail, but that's been a well-engineered plan. And the design ensures that there's no impacts on the adjacent landowners, so there's no fill that's being brought in that's gonna block drainage from anybody from any of the adjacent lands. It's not gonna redirect any stormwater, any rainfall runoff to any adjacent lands. It's maintaining the existing drainage patterns, which is all draining to the south, north is to the left on the page. So that's all going, and the way that the site has been designed is so that it's not concentrating flows, it's still sheet flowing everything, similar to most agricultural lands and the existing drainage patterns that are on the site right now. So, which is important. So in order to get the fill material here, we've already applied for and obtained, and we're approved for a haul permit. So haul permit is already in place. Following the route that you can see, it's not a far distance to Highway 6. So of note with regards to truck traffic, there will be loads that are being brought in. However, it's important to realize that this site is right smack in the middle of a number of quarries. So what ends up happening, to my understanding, I'm not a trucker, but trucks go to the gravel pit empty, obviously, to fill. So most of the time what will happen is that the trucking companies will basically piggyback this, and the trucks will basically be coming full and coming in to dump the site and go right around the corner to the gravel pits. So in a sense, there's actually, for most part, a lot of the truck traffic will actually not be an increase. It will basically be the exactly same trip. It's already going to the quarries. There's 4 quarries that are almost right exactly adjacent to the site.
Can I interject? So are you suggesting then that a truck is going to deliver to, say, use Toronto with fresh aggregate, then they will make a separate pit or a separate trip to, I know we have 3 proposals, they'll make a separate deviation
No,
and then
sorry.
pick up the imported soil and then come to the site? Is that what you're implying by saying that it'll be the same traffic because those same trucks will then be coming back?
So developer X has a road being built. They need a load of granular or 100 loads of granular. that truck has to go to the gravel pit to pick up the granular. So instead of driving to the gravel pit empty, they are coming from another site in an adjacent area, bringing material in anyways, and then dump their load and go straight to the gravel pit to pick up their gravel material that they then take away. So otherwise, they're arriving empty, they're coming into the municipality empty to go to the gravel pit to pick it up. But instead, a lot of times trucking firms, they're trying to make it efficient, right? They like to make a buck on both trips. So if they arrive full, they get paid for that, but they're making that trip to the gravel pit anyways. So that's not gonna be every single trip, but my understanding from talking to the contractors that run the trucks, they're trying to maximize their profits as well. So they will basically be making that same trip doubly profitable, but don't increase the trips on every single one of them because they're already coming in the neighborhood.
I'll leave
That
that
answer your
to
question?
I'll have more, but I'll let.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. So following, has been part of the process is that, qualified professionals obviously are required to, do the design and the planning and the engineering for an application like this. So I'm Meritech Engineering on the bottom, and then, Fortis Engineering has been retained as the qualified professional for the, soil management aspect. So, they're already retained. They prepared a thorough report on the types of materials that are permitted to be used, according to those two regulations, the relatively recent and slowly being rolled out, OREG 4619 for excess soils, and then obviously your own site alteration bylaw, which points to a number of other regulations as well. So all of this work has been prepared in compliance with that regulation, and submitted and been significantly reviewed already. And then going forward, with the approval of council, this project requires a significant amount of maintenance and inspection and monitoring. And that will be done by the two of our firms as well, who are qualified to do that. So yeah, there's been a lot of prepared package material that's already been completed for that. But then they will be active in approving all the source sites. That all has to be very carefully reviewed. There's huge amount of sampling and testing that has to go into that material. That all has to be put against the applicable regulations, and Fortis Engineering reviews that. Then they submit that to the township and their peer reviewers. They review that, so it's a very thorough process which tracks that and monitors it. So it's been a good improvement that the government has enforced, because there have been problems in the past, but this is a very thorough process. So there's, during the arrival, there's monitoring and tracking of all the imported materials, there's daily record keeping, and there will be on-site presence by Fortis. I will be involved at the end of the process to certify that the engineering, that the grading has been completed according to the designs. So with regards to the imported material details, so the Fortis engineer unfortunately had a last minute urgent item, so he couldn't be here, so I can't speak professionally to it, but from the report, these are the agricultural residential uses and their respective table requirements that will be reviewed and met, and those are peer reviewed by your consultants beforehand, before the permit, and then reviewed during the site approval, the source site approval. So construction by nature, unfortunately, does have its drawbacks for a time period. That's the nature of living in a developing world, and construction projects. We all live and work in places that were a nuisance to someone else, and the idea is to try to mitigate that and to make it as manageable as possible, and to be responsible. So there's a number of measures that'll be taken during that period. So obviously, a lot of the municipal standards apply, mud mats and silt fence, minimizing the disturbance zone. So we're not gonna strip the entire site and work on it. That'll be sectioned off and zoned in reasonable areas. Weather is obviously a factor, wind, rain, things like that, that are, all outlined in the proposal, the QP's, proposal package already. That will be, followed by the contractor. And then once that zone has been taken care of, then there's either a plant crop or a cover crop, applied to the site. Having said that, keeping in mind that this is an agricultural site, so it's, in a sense, there's gonna be areas that are open, just like a farmer's field, but, the idea is to maintain cover on it and promptly restore it or use it. So maintenance, of the roadway, the contractor has been chosen for the project as Nichols Ventures. He's present here today. I've worked with him on another number of projects, and he has a very good reputation for construction and maintenance, so on road maintenance, mechanical and dust control, et cetera, daily maintenance on that. And there's a number of procedures that have been outlined in that QP document as well for maintenance and maintaining the nuisance and minimizing the nuisance to the neighborhood. So to move on, that there's a additional request within our application to modify the operating hours, and they're listed there. So that's a request that's being made. So Monday to Friday, 7 to 6, Saturday, 7:30 to 4:30, but no work on Sundays or holidays.
Or Saturdays.
Easy, sorry.
You don't usually run trucks on Saturday. Well, what are you saying?
Just wait till the presentation, please.
So, during the project, then there will be a proper complaint protocol that's in place, so. To start out, there'd be a construction notice that will be issued, to the neighbors, that, and we'd be at the behest of the township to give us instruction of what you would like to put out, to notifying everybody. There'd be a start date, there'd be contact information, and the first point of contact will be the contractor with a 24-hour contact number, and then the second point will be us as civil engineer, and we'll also be the point of contact and take complaints and seriously and deal with them expeditiously. So just a note that as I alluded to already, we've already put in quite a bit of work into preparing a package for this application. So a detailed existing survey, engineering grading plans and cross sections, details and notes, earthworks calculations and fill drawings, erosion sediment control plan, excess soil management plan, stormwater management review, project justification and no adverse effects submission. So that's all been submitted and been peer reviewed. And at this point, my understanding is that there's one minor outstanding item which we've already submitted, which was an outstanding soils report. But that's already been submitted as well. The Grand River Conservation Authority has already been circulated on this and issued the clearance. They have no objection, and same with the County of Wellington. So that concludes my presentation, and our recommendation and request is that the council would approve this site plan permit on behalf of the owner, and available for any questions you may have.
Good, your presentation, I believe, Ms. Brotherson, you have a staff report you're going to present?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant has identified property and spoke this project. I'll just share a few additional project details that staff had included in the report. So as noted, the applicant is proposing to import 145,000 cubic meters of soil between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028. It is anticipated that due to the volume of fill, additional sites may need to be added to the permit over the course of the application. So the applicant will be required to provide appropriate documentation, such as analysis of samples of fill, source site confirmation, et cetera. And this will be reviewed by the township's engineering consultant within 2 business days of receipt. If there are any changes that are required to the haul route, as a result of adding additional source sites, there will be requirements for the haul route permit to be updated, and that will be by staff as well. As noted by the applicant, they are requesting a variation from the hours of operation that are included in the township site alteration bylaw. And this would require approval from council to vary from these provisions. And that's something that staff will bring forward in the recommendation report for council's consideration at a future meeting. And then just a few of the operational procedures that were included in the application that staff wanted to highlight is that the applicant has indicated that the site will be fenced and gated to prevent unauthorized access. That each load will have a bill of lading signed by the authorized source site representative, indicating the name of the source site, hauler, driver, and date time of shipment. There's to be a gatekeeper present to receive each load that will review the bill of lading. The receiving site QP will also ensure that each load is coming from the approved source site. And if there is a bill that's observed to contain an unacceptable material, they do have a protocol listed in their application for how those loads should be addressed as well. And then I'll just mention that we do have our consultants here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna ask, I didn't catch your name.
Jeremy.
Jeremy, you're the contractor, Nichols contractor?
That's right,
And you'll be in charge or looking after the trucking component or no?
the whole project.
I'm gonna ask you to just come down to the table. I feel there's probably gonna be some questions that you need to answer. Just so the cameras can pick up your voice or. All right, so this is the public's opportunity to engage. And when I should come back down here, you may have to twist or something, so if you're posed a question, they can hear you. I believe we need individuals, when I call on you, to stand up, state your name and address for the record. So we'll start with people in the gallery and then I'll move to the online folks. So is there any questions from the gallery at this point?
Yeah, Mike McCall, 6737 Forest Hill Road, right behind the gravel pit. And I'm worried about all the extra trucks and all the extra time they're asking, like running on the weekends, 6 days a week for 3 years. But it's gonna make my life hell. So why do they have to do 6 days a week? Why can't they just do 3 days a week? Which one of you guys wanna
So we
answer?
can answer, yeah, absolutely. Last week we had 2 or 3 days off, rain days. We don't run usually the day after the rain day as well, because it's too muddy. So we lose all those days. You would not be surprised the days we lose. And I don't ever run trucks on the weekend. But if it rained, say Thursday, Friday, I have to prep and get the land ready for Monday work. So the dozer will work on Saturday, but we don't ever run trucks. I want to have my weekends off for my guys. We lose a lot of days to rain. That's the way it is, half load, the industry, we can't control a lot of things. So the same as a gravel pit that's open, your gravel pits are open Monday to Saturday here. Right, they open at 6 AM. We're open at 7, we're normally done before 4:30. I mean, I haven't run a weekend in over 4 years for multiple sites.
I was just instructed that I should ask you to stay facing this way, even though I
I
asked you
think
to
so.
turn around.
Yeah.
Well, that's my bad.
Sure.
For the microphones, if they're answering and you can't hear, just raise your hand and we'll try to adjust, just trying to accommodate the virtual versus
Of course.
the in-person, so sorry about giving that misdirection. Okay, did you need a follow-up with that, or just?
Well, I had another question about why are we not bringing just topsoil in? What's the other subsoil they're bringing into the site? Like you guys were vague on
There's
this.
settlement discussion or mentioned in the report, who wants to answer that yourself? Or
Well,
the applicant
why?
should answer it,
I
really.
think should be up to proponent why, but it makes sense what I hear, you know, you would not bring so much topsoil because there is not that much topsoil to fill in the whole back, that gravel pit. Typically, it's about 1.5 meters, maybe 2 of topsoil goes on the top of other quote unquote clean fill, meaning fill that meets the required standards for this kind of a property. And that's described in the
So what's the
application.
other fill though? Topsoil and is it clay? Like he's already run a bunch of clay in the site illegally there a while ago.
It could be any kind of granular material.
Really?
So just, I'll pause you briefly, and we're not experts on the different tables of soil. But
Yes.
they're described in this lengthy application, but we have table 1, table 2, And they have provincial criteria, and I don't know if you could give a little summary, or sorry, okay, so sorry,
I
Thomas.
know that,
Okay.
yeah.
If you could just speak to table one, table two, which those types of soils that can be brought in, that can be placed under the topsoil. And then dressed with topsoil.
Okay, all right, so for properties agricultural land use, you can bring soil that meets table 2.1. And I'm gonna, probably doesn't mean much to you unless you know you did your homework. The Ministry of the Environment came up with 9 different tables for soil quality, depending on whether the groundwater is used for potable purposes or not. How deep is the bedrock? How close is the surface body of water? That basically covers it. And there is some variation. That's why we end up with 9 tables. For agricultural use, the crop is going to be used for growing crops or grazing animals. The top 1.5 meters must be topsoil, must meet table 1 standard. And that's defined. Typically, that's topsoil. And the topsoil, it's basically a mixture of organic and inorganic materials suitable to sustain growth. Below below the 1.5 meter, but up to the 2 meters above the water table, you can use basically granular material. It could be gravel, sand, mixture of anything, pit run. And that meets the chemical analysis of the material meets the 2.1 table, which is again list of parameters of different allowable concentrations for metals, volatiles, petroleum product. There's a few hundred of them there.
Yeah.
So there is no requirement from geotechnical standpoint. So you ask, can it be clay? It could be. Now, it would make no sense to bring clay because you would not be able really to compact this and it would be difficult. It would be typically it's a mixture of material has silt, clay, sand, gravel, cobbles. It could be anything. It could be rock, crushed rock too. That's all falls under the definition of excess soil or fill. Okay, well, that's how it's defined.
So in those tables, 1 to 9, 1 is the cleanest soil, and as you go the other way, it gets worse.
No,
No,
sorry.
oh,
Actually, table 1 is the most stringent. Then will be table 9 and 8 because they are they depend whether it's a sensitive site or not. If it's close to the surface body water, you have to. So it's not that straightforward. It'll be nice, but it's not. Yeah, the least stringent will be tables 4, 5, 3. It really depends on the situation. But 1 is more stringent. 2.1 is the next one. And like that. So based on the application, this site will be accepting, call it top 2 tiers of soil quality under those tables.
Over the whole range.
but the composition of the soils could vary.
That's
But as long as it meets those 2 requirements, then it's permitted. So you could see on site 2 completely composition of soils different, and it may set alarm bells off. But as long as they meet those provincial standards of table 1 or 2.1, then they'd be permitted. That's how it works. Does that help?
Yep.
Good. Okay. Members of the gallery? Kathy, sorry, I saw Kathy first. Go ahead. Just remember to state your name and address, please.
Kathy White, 4540 Wellington Road 35 in Fuslinch. I'm just gonna be a little bit all over the place because I've been taking notes. But the fill that was coming in during COVID in 2020, 2021, there doesn't appear to, if there wasn't permission to do that. I first noticed it because of the number of dump trucks in front of my house, just constant.
So we'll address that. And it's in the report that, Bill was brought in previously, and that's been, for lack of a better term, dealt with. So that's been through the process with the township. And unless there's something we want, it's been dealt with. So, yes, you're right, it was brought in. And
Well, I'm concerned about the haul route as well. So there have been 2 haul route conversations here. One is, the haul route as proposed. And then if additional fill is coming from different areas, then there was a suggestion here that the haul route could be modified. And I'd like to know what enforcement and consequences there would be for not following the haul route, because as a resident of Puslinch, we spend way too much time policing the gravel pits. And this is just an extension of a gravel pit into the future forever. I don't know how long it takes.
Can I say for us, what we do, we sign our trucks right out. They come the wrong route. We have somebody watching the roads, following, driving up and down the roads. We sign that company out, whether it's the truck or the whole company.
Just
Multiple.
what is sign that company out, fire them?
They can't come back ever. That's it. One and done.
That's great to hear, but I believe
I just wanna know, so
Residents
we have
asking.
our own side of things. We're not just leaving it up to the council and the bylaw to do it. We are bylaw, because you don't come, you don't get in trouble.
yeah, it's in your
So-
interest. Do you want to speak to?
Sorry,
Sure.
yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, so, staff will have the haul route permit, and, that haul route permit is through our road activity bylaw, so we will have enforcement mechanisms through our bylaw. That being said, the applicant has also discussed the complaint protocol, so likely that will be a first step, in working through with the applicant. But we do have those mechanisms.
Similar to other bylaw infractions, we would rely on a reporting. What I feel I'm hearing is that there should be a mechanism that you can utilize through the contractor. Now, there's nothing precluding you from skipping using it, I don't believe, unless staff will say, did you use the conflict resolution mechanism? But if you call in a complaint, we're likely gonna follow up with the contractor. And then, those wheels will be in motion, similar to any other bylaw infraction. And there could be consequences up to and including cancellation of their permit.
Yeah, I think when I read the contract, it's more between the municipality and the company. So the public, I would think, needs to be reassured that there is a consequence. And that seems to be an ongoing problem with the soil movements in the province. Is there's very little enforcement oversight, and they're actually looking for case law to limit the amount of infractions that seem to be happening. I've been attending the excess soils conference for 7 years now. And so I've listened to the QP code and how it's developed from waste into reuse of excess soil. The license was surrendered, I think, 2010, something like that. Why now? Why wait all these years if the rehabilitation has been deemed complete, but not complete enough? And there is significant dollar value added now to bringing in soil. There wasn't at that time. So that's a concern too. This is it's a gift of a lot of money. So take the aggregate out, sign off, it's good to go. And now when there's a huge sum of money here for taking fill onto your property, and that concerns me as well, that there's been quite a lot in time.
So I would, what I'm hearing is, what's the merit of the application? Is it to increase farming productivity? What's the basis for bringing this application forward? Because I actually have similar concerns in the sense that, gravel pits are on my radar. I don't think that's a secret to anyone. And this one is a legacy exhaustive gravel pit that likely, had a requirement to be rehabilitated to agricultural land. So this isn't your problem. I'm just gonna say. So if those rehabilitation requirements are so poor, that now we have a landowner coming to say, this was approved as a gravel pit, the rehabilitation plan was approved by MNR. It's not worth a hill of beans. We need to bring in all this soil to make the yields better. Then part of our conversation should be with the MNR on the rehabilitation going forward, but that's not your problem. But that's the question I'm hearing from Ms. White is, if this was rehabilitated back to the standards that were required of it back in whenever they did it, why are you here? And that's what I think she needs to hear from you.
I also think there was a fill application somewhere in between, because I have some correspondence which I can't find. The township turned down a proposal, am I correct?
Well, let's answer the first part, the merits of the applications, and it's in the application.
Yeah. Sure.
So, because of all the illegal activity with dumping, it was hard to get good fill that we need it further out, and you guys are further out. People were dumping in Mississauga, all over Caledon. Now, because of all the bylaws that are in place, we can get that fill further out to where it has to go. And if you think it's a financial thing, I can tell you we're $250,000 in now. So just take that in mind when you think of how much money is going to be made in this project.
Sorry, I'm not understanding your statement that.
She was
the fill-
asking.
oh,
if it was-
No, I'm saying that the fill is further out. So are you saying because of other municipalities' bylaws and enforcement that you're bringing it out further because it's easier, or I'm not?
No, it's not
calculating
easier,
through?
just for that money wise, it's not easier, but because there was so many illegal dumps everywhere. They weren't out here. They were in, like I said, Mississauga, in Caledon, in the closer areas. Now, because of the rules and regulations and the bylaws, they've really hammered down on it. So people like me who work in the farther areas in Hamilton and that, it's easier for me now to certify fill and bring it to a location that would not have happened, let's say 5 or 6 years ago, because it was just a free for all. So it had nothing to do with, no other townships, lots of other townships, and all of them actually do.
I don't think it addresses the merits of the application, is it?
Well-
Read it in here, is it? I'm actually looking at it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so I'm not an agrologist, or an official on that, but my understanding is that the yield is poor. The existing, topsoil is there, so I think you kind of, in a sense, leaned over to us and said, it isn't our place at this point to speak to what happened in the past. And in some ways, unfortunately, we having to go through this whole process has been necessary to do what should have been done maybe in the past, but I don't believe that that's what the debate of the site alteration permit. And sadly, I think that the fact that we're here is because what didn't get completed in the past to completely rebuild the site didn't happen. So now we are forced to rebuild the site under this process.
Increase the yields of the.
That's right, to increase the yield of the crop cover that's on site. Cause right now it's, I mean, if you look at, again, I'm not an official on that, but you look at Google Maps, et cetera, you can see the various vintages of the crop, and it's all very poor coloration in a sense. All you see is yellow, poor cover on there compared to the rest of the healthy, where the topsoil hasn't been stripped on the other sites.
Sorry, Kathy, that's the second part of that
Well, I
question.
guess the point I'm trying to make here, Chris, is that site sat in that condition when you had to purchase soil. Now that soil is an income, we see in this application come. Does that make sense?
It does.
It sat for many years like that.
We're not privy to the landowner's situation.
No, but I'd like to
So-
raise that point, that
And-
it's going to be a cost to Puslynch
Understood.
for the roads, for the heartache that it causes us to, just going out on your road for a walk with
That's right.
trucks running up and down was horrific. During COVID, I didn't know what was going on, and then I followed a truck and realized what was happening.
Yeah, no, I recognize that and
It's
appreciate your comments on that.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if the applicant has to divulge their personal information as to why they decided to do it now.
No, I
versus
understand. I
5
just
years
like.
ago, yes, the environment has changed and it's different, but
Mhm.
at this stage of the game, we're just dealing with what we have.
And like aggregates, was a commitment to return the gravel pit to agriculture. But the same thing here, there's no firm commitment or nothing in writing to say that will be a farm. It could be an estate lot with a big house and a barn. We don't know, so
Sometimes we have to just. take
basing
things
it
on their face
on
value.
the crop and all those other things, to me, is immaterial, because it may never be that. It was supposed to be agricultural, and initially, with the permission for the gravel pit came the rehabilitation.
Mhm.
I said, notice something that the consultant said, for the most part, suitably set back from the GRCA regulated limits. The GRCA, wetlands in that area, part of the Cranberry Oil Well Bog and that whole Little Track complex. And that was a big concern during the original, pit application. I believe there may have been monitoring laws on that property. There was a concern about the flow of water from the property, that the wetlands would be, sufficient or not too much. So there was some care taken. One of the comments that I read from a consultant was that the base of the pit, like that sort of teacup thing, I'm just saying that, would help to collect water. And I wonder if there's been any investigation. First of all, I didn't really know of any studies that were done with those provincially significant wetlands or there. And the hydrogeology of the site. There's also a note made by the township that the south part of the site, there was an area that appeared to be closer than 1.5 meters from the groundwater. Because there were cattails and it was wet most of the time. I think the fact that it is so close to that complex, and that was something that was taken into consideration during the pit license. It's something that the township really needs to investigate, or consultants at this time.
Do you have any comments on GRCA?
Just email.
Sure, the application was stipulated to the GRCA, and so the GRCA has reviewed it and provided comments that the proposed development activity was outside of the GRCA's regulated areas, and therefore the Sure. So the GRCA provided a comment that the proposed development activity is located outside of the GRCA's regulated area, and therefore the GRCA had no objection to the proposed site alteration permit application.
Was there not also correspondence from the GRCA in there that due to the change in their scope from the provincial government to not even circulate them anymore? So that's what I remember reading.
I've been going back and looking.
But they don't have the jurisdiction any longer, GRCA.
No, the township. Before.
So, I don't know who on your side would, I recognize you were stating there were setbacks from, property boundaries and things of that nature. I would assume that, the proximity to any of these natural sensitive areas, can you speak to them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I think they do still have jurisdiction as far as their regulated boundaries or the regulation limits. So we are outside of that, and we've actually added distance from that. I'm not sure, there's a few comments through you that were made that I'm actually quite confused about. With regards to groundwater comments, things like that.
Cattails?
There's a number of comments that were made that I'm completely unfamiliar with that have any application to this application. But we are outside of that, their entire regulation limit, and they already provided their clearance.
Staff of any insight onto the cattail area that could be within a certain prescribed distance to the water table? Where, do you know where you're referencing that from, Captain?
I may have a leg.
Liam, how about I move on while you dig that up? Is that fine? And
Well,
what do you think about it?
here. Have there been any, is it a recharge area, and has that been mapped? What's going in here? Is it going into, is this a major recharge area? I know the groundwater is flowing southwest. There's also a tributary of the Irish Creek on the property.
So these are hydrogeological questions. It
That's not required.
wasn't required. Okay.
No,
Well, that wasn't required, so that wasn't studied.
I think the fact that it was a pit, there was a lot of, there was a significant file for the original application that took into consideration where that pit was located.
Sure, but that's all come to fruition, the license has been surrendered, and here we are today, right? So I'm not sure how,
Well,
Are you
it's
trying to-
helpful, I think, in looking at the soil coming in. Going back to see the conditions the site was supposed to be left in, and also the concerns. With the slopes and. Pit elevations. That's a very, there's a lot of description about that property, so just coming in and filling it to grade. I'm not sure if they've considered the runoff to the wetlands,
or
the effect on the wetlands.
I believe it was stated earlier that the runoff has to mirror what's currently on the site, so. I don't know if our soil, Thomas, like, the, you know. The impact, the water getting from the top and going down through the, you know, table 2.1 soils. Has that all been reviewed or?
No, it's not been reviewed because the way it worked is the ministry's done all the work up front. Like ministry went through the process, like a risk-based process, when they took different settings, you know, for example, depth of the groundwater, whether the groundwater is potable or not. And run the studies to say how much of various parameters, metals, petroleum, or hydrocarbons, other, can you have in soil? So if that soil, if the water runs through the soil, rain, snow melt, surface water, how much of that, those chemicals, those parameters will leach out and can affect the groundwater? So they back calculate. There's no sort of there's no absolutes, there's no clean. So ministry takes a risk, I think it's 1 to 1 million. And if the risk are below 1 to 1 million, they say the chance of this water being impacted by that soil to be above that risk threshold, you cannot have more than so much of specific chemical in the soil. And that's how they put those tables together. So that's why the closer you get to the surface body of water, the more stringent. The closer you to groundwater, you know, the more the results, the standards are more stringent. So when it comes to dealing with excess soil, any other remedial project, whatnot, you know, you have to know your site conditions. You know your depth of groundwater is going to be residential, commercial, agricultural, and then you see what's the maximal allowable concentration of chemicals in your soil that you can put on that problem. And you don't have to go through every single time through no hydrogeological assessment. That's been done. Now, if you think that the ministry's numbers are too stringent, because they are stringent, and then your site can fall under less stringent requirements, then it's up to you. Using ministry protocols and methods and methods basically, prove to the ministry or to municipality that you should be allowed to bring soil that is not as clean, call it, as the table 2.1. But that's a big undertaking because you got to redo all the risk-based studies that ministry already done to come up with the generic numbers that they put into those tables. So if you meet the table, great, you don't have to do the work. If you don't, you can try to come up with your own study following this whole laid out process to prove that for whatever reason, your site should be allowed to take less stringent material. So that's all written up in the regulations and the protocols for the sites.
Allowed to take less than,
So I'll Cole's note version that.
should be like, but he said, should be allowed to take
No,
less
but-
than something.
No, so the ministry set the standards. And then the site is gauged against the standards for whatever water impact it will have. And if they know the water table level, then they can bring in 2.1 and level soils, because they already understand how much infiltration will be and the risk associated with certain percentage of contamination, table 2.1. If they were wanting to import less clean soil, then they would have to go through all those extra studies to prove that it's not going to impact the water. So where we're at here is what I'm hearing is that they've taken their property, their box, they know the level of the water table. And that they're going, that's why we have all the monitoring in place and the tracking, because they're gonna bring in only this table of soil, which then is acceptable from the provincial standards to be placed. Recognizing that there would be some infiltration. So that's where we're at.
That's about soil quality.
Pardon me?
Soil quality,
Yeah,
we're talking about the wetlands.
well, you're talking about the water going through this new soil to the wetlands, right?
Running off from the top, too much, not enough. It's because I looked at the application for the gravel pit license and saw the concerns at that time about the wetland, which is adjacent. And that's my concern right now. If they bring in contaminated soil, I'm not testing it. But I am concerned about the little tract of complex wetlands that are there in Westminster, and they're not far from the site. And there was a concern with the gravel pit license that the flow to the wetlands was maintained appropriately, not too much, not too little.
So
the
before you
stuff
move on, can you speak to the runoff from the site, where it's going,
Yep.
how it's getting there, and then. Oh God, I stayed up all night reading this. My understanding is that these table 2.1 soils with some different characteristics can be built up to a certain level. Then after that, it gets cleaner, which, and I'm making an assumption that that way, any water is less likely to make it to the less desirable characteristic. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I think that's the,
I think the challenge here is that we're conflating a number of issues at the same time. So the comments that are being made are blending issues together, and that makes it difficult. So I can speak to a couple things. I'm not a geoscientist or geotechnical engineer, so I'm not gonna tread into that area too far with the tables and qualities, et cetera. However, so the application got screened by outside consultants, first of all, who reviewed what would be required for a complete application. So that was done by other consultants. And they deemed what was required to look at this site as to, with regards to what studies needed to be done. So we were given that list and we followed that list. So there can be speculation on all kinds of other things that people might want to be done, but there was a list that was given to us and we followed that, and it was a significant list, and we did that carefully and properly, and it's been reviewed. And at this point, we've addressed all the concerns. So a significant amount of work was done to go into, to follow what professionals who reviewed the file required of the application. I think that's important to know. Secondly, then getting into some of the concerns about wetlands. So I'm speculating now, I've not reviewed the previous application or previous permit for the gravel pit. That's been years in the past. Generally speaking, my surmising would be that if there were concerns for the wetland, so I have been involved in many other projects, and generally the target for that is send as much water to the wetland as you can. Don't dry it up. Wetlands like water, they want water. They can handle surges. They want the consistent. So a gravel pit, what would typically happen is it would eliminate the runoff. Because you open it up, you allow infiltration to the gravel, etc. You maybe go lower and no, the water doesn't go to the wetland anymore. So if there were concerns for the wetland, my guess would be is that they were concerned that the water was disappearing. So at this point, we're proposing to have a gradual regrading. It's going to meet the existing conditions along the boundary edge, even set back further from the regulation limits. The same amount of water, potentially, there may be a slight increase because you're going from gravel, open gravel, to topsoil surface, but they're extremely low slopes. So we did a brief analysis on the stormwater management, and that it's nominal difference from the barns and the whatever. So essentially, it's irrelevant. And if anything, there's a benefit to the wetlands because it will potentially take a little bit more of the surface, but there should be, in a sense, there's no change. So again, I still go back to the fact that this was screened by professionals. We were given a list and we've addressed the requirements that were put before us.
Okay, thank you.
Because that, I mean, that the whole process is very regulated. Like the ministry consulted with the industry, consulted with MNRs and others and biologists, and the process is stringent enough. The idea is that if you meet the minimum requirements in the regulation, that will be safe. Now, obviously, we're assuming that people follow the rules and that's beside the point, but so we talk about soil quality. There are specific requirements. Once you're getting close to groundwater, you have to be, or the soil has to be cleaner, let's put it this way. If you're getting within 30 meters of wetlands and bodies of water, the soil has to be cleaner. So there are specific requirements. Where are you putting the soil on site? And it's all regulated. So yes, there are specific requirements. If they want to go closer than 30 meters, and it'll have to be a specific requirement, like a meter requirement, this soil will have to be cleaner than the soil placed 50 meters away from them. So that's how this works. And again, it's the process laid out, and it's really pretty robust. Now it all comes down to also on the implementing, following it, and making sure that people follow those rules. That's really.
Ma'am, just don't forget your name. No, the man behind you.
Oh, sure.
Hi, my name is Lorimer. I live at 123 Downey Road. I was a member of the Mill Creek Sub-Watershed Study, so I'm quite familiar with the whole area around where they want to put the soil. And I think I'd like to correct the consultant with regards to the depth of water table in the wetland. Wetlands survive on a very narrow regime of water, too much, and the trees, whatever wetland trees die, and too little of the wetland starts to dry up. So there is actually a regime, I can't remember how many feet it is, but it's not that much. And the other thing is, you know, I don't think anybody can tell you if any, I took the environmental site engineers course or engineered assessment for contaminated sites. And I don't know how anybody can say that unless you test every truckload that comes in there, that you are not going to be bringing in contaminated soil, because it only takes 1 liter of DNAPLs, non-dense, it only takes a liter of DNAPLs to contaminate groundwater. And so I'm wondering if you're going to be paying, the proponent's going to be paying for testing all of these people's wells over the long term, because sometimes it takes years to reach the level where they're going to be taking it up in their wells. So that's one thing I have a concern about, because I know what happened when I took the environmental site assessment. Of course, what happens when they go in and take up all the soil, they don't check the whole site to look for how contaminated the soil is. They're not going to be checking every truckload that comes into that site. Somebody's already made money off this site. They took all the gravel out and they made money on this site. And now they want to make more money by bringing in fill that may impact everybody around them, their quality of life, their well water, even the regional aquifer could be here because they've taken all the gravel off the site. So it's already, how do I say it? It's already susceptible to contamination because you stripped off that layer and they brought in soil. Now they can't grow anything like, well, why can't they plant trees? Why can't they grow hay? There's other crops that you could plant in there that would benefit the environment around it without bringing in soil.
Okay.
Sure.
You're right. I mean, if you collect a soil sample, teaspoon of sample, and you split it 5 ways, there will be 5 different results. And then when you sample those 5 results, you're gonna get 5 new results. That's true. That's chemistry. That's how it works. It's all based on a reasonable approach. Like ministry requires minimum 1 sample for 200 cubic meters of soil brought to the site. That's the minimum requirement.
What's that?
And that's deemed to-
20 trucks.
Let's say 25, 20, depends on the side of the truck.
Wow.
And that's deemed to be safe. If you have even more soil, at certain point, the number decreases. So from up to 600 cubic meters, 60 trucks, let's say, you have 3 samples minimum required. That's all you need to bring. After that, you do 1 for every 200. Once you go over, don't quote me on it, 10,000, I think, it goes up to 1 every 500 or 300, I forget the number. It's the frequency goes down.
Well,
It's it's
Like an honor system, then.
it's not our system. I mean, it comes down to when ministry comes up with the numbers, they run, statistical analysis and modeling and whatnot. And it basically they come up with what's reasonable, what's practical, and how can we protect the human health and environment. That's their ministry mandate, is to protect human health and environment. If you were saying you have to sample every, you come up with a number, everything will just come to a halt and nobody's gonna be any better. So there is build risk. There's always, I'm telling you, there's no absolute clean, absolute theory. Ministry took approach 1 in a million, the acceptable risk.
Yep.
And they use those numbers to come up through their studies. And it's been, and it's not just Ontario Ministry of Environment. It's all based on the science around the world, the States, Europe, everywhere. It's the same approach.
But other areas have refused to accept the risk. They're not allowing filling to go on that comes from outside their area. Woolwich Township is a good example. I believe they already have a fill bylaw. And so I think that, saying that we're not, this is an acceptable risk, I don't find that acceptable because I worked on groundwater pollution issues and I know what happens. And I know there's been illegal filling in Guelph where they've had contamination just from whatever they brought in. So I think we should all be aware that this does put the groundwater at risk. It may even put the regional aquifer at risk. We don't really know. We don't know enough because a few years ago, how much fill was being brought in? 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of fill coming in. Now we're getting fill from all over the place, all the contaminated sites in Toronto, and other areas. So I think you should reject this proposal. They've already there's other things that could be done to the land without bringing in a bunch of fill.
So I want to ask staff, that may be in the report, may not be, but have we mapped the closest proximity to wells? That's not the right way to put it, but the neighboring wells location. And the second part of that is, have we built into the complaint mechanism a well testing or even well testing protocol if there's a complaint about people's drinking water wells?
I'm not aware of anything proposed like that. However, the regulations clearly specifies how close the water fill can be brought close to the potable wells, like 100 meters within the potable well. If there is no well on site yet, there's a proposed well, they have to stay also within 100 meters. There's the soil standard change within 100 meters of the proposed well. And if there is no idea when the well is going to be built at this point, it has to be within 100 meters of the center of the site. That's just very simple.
I'm more concerned with the neighbors, so when we get this back, staff, if we can at least try to figure out where the, not worry about components well per se, because that's his own well. But I would like to see if we have that data, where the neighbors' wells are, and consideration for inclusion in the complaint protocol. Well interference. Does that make sense? And I'm not suggesting that staff will adopt that, but I'd like to hear it not and back. Did you have another one? Oh, I was making sure you didn't have, you're okay. I'll come back to you. I just wanted to give people that haven't had a chance to speak in. Go ahead.
I'm Valerie Gagne. I live at 67454 Stell Road. Our property is adjacent to Side Road 10 and our backyard backs onto the site. I have a lot of concerns about this project going forward, as the last time the fill came through, my children and I and our dogs use that side road. We bike, we walk. One of my kids was almost run off the road by one of the past dump trucks. There was an excessive amount of dirt and muck. They were doing a good job most days cleaning it up, but it wasn't perfect. Our yard was consistently bombarded with dirt, dust, and soil. To the point that if we used our pool, before we had people over, we had to vacuum, empty our filter, clean out our filters because of the amount of dirt that was coming through our property. It was even something you could feel in your hair. We couldn't sit outside, we couldn't use our backyard. We barely used it in the last couple years for this reason. So I am concerned about that. I also work from home. My office is adjacent to Side Road 10. There's constant vibration, trucks moving, noise. You're trying to conduct phone calls, do other things, and it's very disruptive. So I have concerns over that as well. So the other question is, was there anything about dust to control dust, anything put into place for that sort of purpose? Because Side Road 10 was a terrible mess and our yard was a mess. And I wouldn't want to see that going on for 3 more years.
So, first on the trucking, I remember when that was transpiring. I do believe that a couple things with the haul route in place and penalty mechanisms that that could be utilized by the township, that I'm pretty confident that if approved, that the haul route will be adhered to. Along with the fact that concession 4 is now closed at the Hanlon, it was likely more convenient to turn on concession 4 and come down and come past your home. Behavior will likely, along with the contractor being very stringent on the haul route, will ensure that they adhere to the way they're supposed to go. I would also commit to you that if I hear continued infractions on the haul route, I would vote in favor of removing this permit. It's not tolerant of non-compliance of site alt. So, so that part I feel will be adhered to. So it was the trucking, dust. I did read in the report, there is a robust responsibility for street sweeping and things of that nature, but then there's also dust on the site. Now, gravel pits, they're allowed to add water. I don't know if making the site where they're gonna be hauling in this type of fill would just make it worse. I don't know. So how, is there a component of dust control for the on-site dust creation?
We have a water truck that we use on our sites that we run around with. It's got a little sprayer. And that's what we use. We even use to wash the roads as well afterwards during the seasons. That allows us to. So it's hard on the equipment as well, dust, you know, and we know it's hard on neighbors, so. We bought one years ago and it's been a big help for us.
So I'm sorry, is there anything you want to add or Justin around the dust component?
Through Mr. Chair, so if council were to approve the application, there will be a requirement for the applicant to enter into an agreement with the township. And through that agreement, we're able to add conditions. And so with the complaint protocol, with dust controls, those are all items that we can add in as conditions to the agreement so that it's clear what is required by the applicant through the duration of the permit.
So was the trucking and dust, was there something else, anything else I'm missing?
It was the noise and the vibrations of the constant trucks and it wasn't just that, it was the bulldozers, like that they're waking you up at 7 in the morning on a Saturday. You know, sometimes we work late, we have different shifts, we might be working till 2, 3 on a project. And you can't even, you know, like it's so loud because our back bedroom is right adjacent to the property. So it was waking my daughter up too, like everybody was hearing it in the house.
And we heard from another local around concerns around the hours of use site. I'm sure there'll be a conversation with council around the permitted hours going forward. Not likely to have tonight, but get over that and we'll have those discussions. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Michael Hall again. I got concerns about the Hall Road coming up from Laird Road to Forest Out. That road is already starting to break up. So if they run all these trucks over that road, who's gonna repave it? Are we gonna repave it as a township or who's gonna manage the road?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the haul route permit, there are securities that are required to be collected and those have been collected when that permit was approved. And those can be drawn upon for road maintenance, repair, that sort of thing. It's all stipulated within that document.
Okay, well, it's already starting to break up, so it's really, like I walk up and down that road every day, so.
we do an initial, or we did an initial assessment of the road.
So yes, through
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, those are done.
Yeah, it was just a dirt road that they paved over, right? So it seems to be getting heaved and all kinds of spots. You drive down it, it's rough, it's crazy. So once they start running those dump trucks down there, it's gonna just demolish that road.
So we should have a conversation around the road and
Go down and take a look at the road. It's got some big wows in the road. Then you have to drive around or, you know, it buckles your teeth. Dump trucks will just rip it apart.
Donnie, go ahead. Sorry, you say it.
John McNee, 6927 concession two. Speaking on behalf of our group, Mill Creek stewards, and we are concerned because of the number of pits around the Mill Creek, which we consider our concern, and the likelihood that this infill of excess soil will spread to many other pits in West Lynch. I guess our greatest concern is you as council are the final protector of our Bush Lynch community. I hear you referring to provincial standards and stringent regulations. As a community, as a council, we know how effectively that is applied to the aggregate industry. Bush Lynch has faced all kinds of problems because that enforcement has not taken place. Standards have not been met, regulations have not been followed. We're opening a door here to a whole new aggregate industry type form of situations that could go on just as long as the last 40 years have applied to Bush Lynch with respect to ag. And be far more damaging because we're not just taking something out of Bush Lynch, we're bringing an unknown into Bush Lynch and something that could have ramifications for decades, if not a century. Even this situation, 145,000 cubic meters of soil coming in, has not been defined as storage, and they've defined certain amounts, but they've said the rest will be defined later. And yes, it will meet these provincial regulations and etc. We know how well that works. This is an opportunity for Bush Lynch Council at the beginning, when it hasn't already spread as it has with aggregate, to say no to something that's going to be a problem in the future of Bush Lynch. So it's very broad, our comment. It's not specific to this pit, but it's very, very appropriate to the future. You folks are going to make a decision that's going to have serious, serious effects down the road, if not immediately on some of these residents who are close by. But we're talking about all the other pits in Bush Lynch, literally billions of dollars of profit to the industry. So it's going to happen if the door is opened. So we just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
Question. And I believe I know the answer, but Bush Lynch cannot refuse excess soils. I shouldn't say Bush Lynch, municipalities not refuse excess soils. My understanding, when they did the excess soil regs, they in the province put in place that you have to receive it. So they're
So through Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll start and then if Thomas wants to chime in, but the township for a long time did have a prohibition on excess soils. It was in a bylaw that was less than effective, prohibiting something that's occurring and not having a path forward to permit something is not an effective control mechanism. What you end up seeing is the importation occurring, and it's just occurring illegally without any checks and balances. So that was in Bush Lynch for over 10 years, and it was problematic. It didn't work. It was not an effective system. So what the township and this council did, realizing that that does not work, is put in a bylaw that allows for applicants to bring in soil in a way that aligns with the provincial excess soil regime. For better or for worse, that is what it is. And it has gone through, as Thomas has outlined, it's a stringent document. And we have dovetailed our bylaw to align with that. The alternative is by not allowing this type of use or this type of activity in the township, is it will still occur. And the township will have no regulation, no control over what's coming in. And will end up in a very litigious situation over and over and over with these uses. And so what we're seeing is a bylaw that provides a path forward in a way that aligns with what the ministry has deemed to be in the best interest of human health and the environment.
Yeah, like I believe that township also got a legal advice too, when during the preparation of the new bylaw, and it's a legal question whether the township can prohibit and acceptance of imported fill or not, excess soil. So I don't know for sure, but I believe that you could say no excess fill, and there'll be your bylaw, and then there'll be trucks at night running around dumping all over. That happens other places. And ministry and the industry recognize that it happens, it's illegal, there's no control over it. It's actually, organized crime was involved in doing this. It was very profitable. So the choice was made to look at the excess soil, not as a waste, but also as a resource. And regulate it and put in place all those checks and measures and to minimize the potential for people breaking the law, but at the same time providing avenue for those who want to follow the rules to do it legally, cleanly, and it's a documented process that can be checked. And so I think that's the answer.
Thank you for that. All right. Any other members of the?
Can I make a follow-up on that? So, that question? I understand what you're saying, and as I said, now I think what it comes down to is how effective are those provincial regulations. And so when we say we shouldn't stop excess soil from being dumped because of the potential for illegal dumping to take place, I think that's a very bad road to take. Because that illegal dumping at least is relatively limited. We have the capacity, litigious though it may be, to attack those particular situations and deal with. But the door we're opening now is a door not for a couple of hundred truckloads coming into Puslinch illegally each year, but for literally thousands of truckloads. We're talking about literally hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of soil. And as the gentleman's mentioned, the chance of that being contaminated, even 1 in a million, raises the high specter with millions of yards of soil coming in, almost guarantees contamination. And with our pits below water level, guarantees that contamination getting into the aquifer at some point in the system. So the question of whether we ban excess soil to me seems a no-brainer. It really is the only way to go at this point, and challenge other municipalities to do the same. And yes, deal with the litigious situations when they come up, because they are not that common, and at least it deals with the massive soil coming in. So that's kind of.
Thanks, John.
So through Mr. Chair, just on that last comment, I think it's important to note that the township responds with bylaws, the establishment of regulatory bylaws, either because it's a legislative requirement or because there is a problem in the municipality that they're trying to deal with. So in this case, this bylaw was brought forward because there was a significant problem with illegal fill in the township. So I can say it is the #1 complaint in our bylaw department is illegal fill. It is a very common occurrence in Puslinch. Like I said, when you look at our stats, it's the #1 reason why we dispatch our bylaw officer to sites. It would be well beyond our limited resources here to litigate every single application.
It's almost beyond our resources to litigate one.
Correct.
Correct. One.
So we have files where there was illegal fill that was imported that are spanning 2 and 3 years in terms of our time spent at provincial offenses court. We hire specialists, we hire lawyers. This is in hundreds of thousands of dollars to the taxpayer to litigate these files. We also have our bylaw officer that can't keep up with these, it is a significant issue in Coast Lynch. It is not realistic that we are able to prohibit something that is this prominent in our municipality. It is just not realistic. And also, I think there has to be, what we've heard is that what the court systems want to see, especially when these things kind of come to that point where we're having a decision made, is there needs to be a path forward. It cannot be, this is a prohibited use and it's not allowed. The courts are not accepting that. They want to see, there is provincial legislation in place that says can be done safely. Municipalities, you need to provide a path forward in order for this to be a permitted use in your municipality. So what we're doing is through this bylaw, and again, this is a new bylaw, it's been in place for about a year. This is our very first major application that we're processing, and we're working through the process to see where it can be improved and that sort of thing. But prohibiting fill in our municipality is not going to be a realistic option for the township.
I also feel that if we build a bylaw, and I'm not saying we're going to approve this or decline it, but if we just give the guys that there's a path and say no, 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 that won't help the municipality in front of the court. I'm very much a supporter of managing this as best we can. Especially if it's under the, the premise that it's to improve farming. Farmland, I've seen reports we're losing farmland at a, high rate. So if we can, return some lands to better farming, that's a win, as long as that's the true intention. So it is a balance. It's a long way around, so. Okay, we still gotta get to the people online. We can call it off.
Somebody had.
Go ahead, sir.
George Anastasia Post 4658, side road 10 north. Right beside the property. We're on the soil. We've gone through this a few years ago. With all the trucks on the same property. And created a major mayhem for us living right beside. First of all, waking up in the morning. By the truck boxes, the tailgates, bang, bang, bang. Constantly all day long. Then we have the dust. Then we have the disruption of wildlife. I have not seen any deer in my back property ever since that first episode with a trucking firm on the property before. So we're not only disrupting our way of life, we're also disrupting our wildlife. So I'm not sure which way we're gonna go about it, but what we need to think is the future of Bushlands. I left Guelph just to have some peace and quietness. And I don't think I'm gonna be very happy listening to the trucks and bulldozers for the next 3 years or whatever it is. Every day. You can, in the wintertime, we're cooped up inside the house. In the summertime, we like to be outside on a deck, call some friends, have a barbecue. We cannot do that with all the dust lying around. Who's gonna be cleaning our cars, our motorcycles, our windows? I mean, it's a never ending job. We've gone through that the first time. And it is a major disruption, especially living right beside the property. And why wasn't it thought the first time around to bring the proper soil?
I spoke to that around the rehabilitation.
With contaminated, I've been involved with contaminated soil. It did not go to Hamilton. It went to Stratford on another farm. To me, as an owner, I didn't care. I paid to get rid of it. Wherever it went wasn't my concern, but I did know it didn't go to Hamilton, it went to Stratford. So I just leave that up to you people to make the decisions.
Before you sit down, I have a question for you, because this has been on my mind. What would be, if this application is approved, what's more palatable? A longer application period, because then they have less frequency of trucks, or a shorter application period but more trucks?
Although just bring in topsoil.
But just, it's just a question,
You know,
I'm curious, cause.
Yeah, I really don't know. The lady over there said, no, I'm sorry, the lady behind, the property area, it's already been made money. It's made money several times now. I like to know what's the motive behind it.
I have problems with
You know,
basing our decision based on
it's not
monetary
even that
benefit to the resident.
You know, living over there, I see families walking up and down, people taking their doggies out, bicyclists constantly.
No, I agree.
You know what I mean? The road is not wide enough to have bicycle lanes or anything. The people just, it's a quiet neighborhood. That's gonna be all disrupted. You live beside where I am, sir, and you see how would you like to wake up every morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, bang, 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 every day, all day long. You know, that's a major disruption as far as I'm concerned towards my lifestyle.
And that's why I was trying.
And that's why I moved over there.
So it's trying to get a feel, if there's an application that's approved, there's two components. You know, a longer period with less bang, bang, bang per day, per week. Or if this is to improve farmland and you need better crops, is it more palatable to the folks that live there?
It should have been thought
To
out
get it done.
before, sir.
But that ship
It-
is
you know,
sailed though. But I guess you don't want to answer the question, which is fine, but I would appreciate feedback from the residents on that component. Because that's a part of my decision on this is, should this be condensed? Should it be, you know, the 3, the 4 year to spread out the impact? These are, because these are real, if it's approved, so.
If it's gonna get, if it's gonna be okay, you know, I'd live with it. But they have to sign a 99-year lease that's not gonna be happening, change the farmland. How would I like to go that? Because there's a motive behind all this, sir.
I agree,
Sure.
and
Okay.
it.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. The impacts of having a gravel pit and then having essentially the same impacts again is problematic. So
Exactly.
I get it.
This is what I'm saying. It's already been done once. It got refilled. Wrong soil, that's not my concern. That should have been thought out before. What is the property gonna be used for?
Yeah. And the financial component has come up a couple times, and the analogy I would use is, if somebody has a severance off their property. And they apply for another severance, should we not permit their severance because they made money off the first severance? I don't think that's a good decision.
Well, you have years that you.
But I'm just saying, like, it's just not, we're looking at the value of the application as presented, and I recognize there's a monetary gain for the resident. But it likely shouldn't be the foundation of the decision. It should be on our groundwater, the impacts to our community, the merits of the application, those types of discussions. So I wouldn't ask.
What about zoning? If you're saying it's agricultural and you're turning it into a commercial fill operation, how does that fit into the zoning for
So,
this area?
there's
Because
a
these
fill-
are all residential homes who pay a lot of money in taxes for a nice quiet neighborhood, who pick their retirement space for serenity and calm. That's not what's happening.
Fair, but there's also a mono house, that decision. The better farm practice decision, mono. Farmer, I believe it was an orchard farmer, there was a importation prohibition. Farmer wanted to bring in fill to improve the land. Municipality said no, they went to the normal farm practice and lost because there was a prohibition. You have to provide a path forward for farmers. That's where we're stuck on. I agree with you on the concerns around commercial fill operation, especially in exhausted
Would
gravel.
you
pit.
agree that the amount of fill being proposed for that, what is it, 33 acres is a lot.
I would agree, it's a lot of fill, yeah, I would agree to that, but
Yeah.
as we get further in the process, you know, I already asked the question of the applicant about the merits of the application, is it for farm shop, so. Okay. I'm gonna switch online real quick, if anybody not had a chance to ask a question,
What's that?
excuse me, sir, you just gotta keep the quorum for a bit. There's people waiting patiently online, so I wanna give them an opportunity to ask their questions and then.
Jackie's, her name is Jackie Curry and she's.
All right, Jackie, I apologize for the delay, but we're gonna move you over so that you can ask your questions. Required to state your name and your address, please. And I'm being asked to ask you to turn your video on, please, Jackie Curry. Probably tired of waiting for me to call and we'll prompt here.
Here, just a sec. We have someone else.
If you wanna move to.
I'm trying.
Oh, hi Jackie. We heard you.
Can you hear me?
We can now. Is there any way you can turn your video on?
I'm trying to, but I'm not technically. I am very technically challenged. I
Okay,
apologize.
that's fine. It's fine. I don't think we need our video, do we?
Okay. Okay.
Just hang on, Jackie. Just make sure you clearly state your, we know your name, but your name and your address, please.
My name is Jackie Fosbury at 4729 Side Road 10 North.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. All I have to say is there are other ways of going about planting and farming. Okay? That there are ways of farming that the existing farmer has not done. Not farmer, but owner of the land has not done. So planting corn in clay, which he has planted, and the land, the soil that he's brought in has been all soil from Brampton, which is clay. And is not acceptable for planting corn. There are other acceptable crops that can be planted in corn, or sorry, planted in clay, which has not been done and can help break up the soil which has been put in. And if you could do that for the next couple of years, that could help break up the soil, which is here, etc. Is anybody hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're just being polite and letting you finish your opinions.
Okay. Sorry, just want to let you know sorry. I have I have a heart condition.
Okay.
A major heart
we've heard you
condition.
talk.
Sorry, I'm sorry. So I just want to understand, or not understand, but I want you guys to understand I live here. Okay? And
Okay,
when these trucks first start going down this road, we got a puppy. And we could hardly walk down the road because of the trucks going back and forth.
okay.
And I am a horticulturalist of over 20 years. And I can't, right now, I'm going through cardiac rehabilitation. And I cannot walk down this road if these trucks are going up and down like they were. I'm not joking.
Okay. No, we understand.
The only way this can happen is if proper uh sorry, my brain is not functioning properly. If there's proper
Control over the trucking?
I'm
you're-
really sorry.
That's fine. I think we understand the basis of your concerns, that you're trying to suggest that the property owner should, investigate, you know, different crops to improve the soil. And
Yes,
you have concerns
exactly.
about-
There should be
And-
legumes, there should be wheat, oats, but also proper irrigation, like proper sorry, my brain is really not.
But we get the basis of your concerns, and then the truck traffic now. There will be a prescribed haul route. Would that give you an opportunity to walk on roads that won't be occupied by these trucks? I think that would be the scenario, and as I indicated earlier, that my position is to be very little tolerance of you know, not adherence to the haul routes. Now, thus providing you an opportunity to walk somewhere in the community, recognizing that not every truck driving down the road is going to the site. It could be problematic, but it is the nature.
I
of the
agree
beast.
with that, but I also am concerned with my community because I do understand that others in my community have been affected by the traffic of the dump trucks over the years. And
Yes,
the
we've heard
fact
more
that,
of them.
no, just a second. The fact that the community has been addressed and then it's been affected towards us.
Okay.
So that we have been affected, and to the fact that my children have not been even able to walk their dogs down the road because the traffic has been horrendous to and fro for an entire 8-hour 8-hour day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
your
they
concerns,
have been.
staff are noting your concerns.
Yeah, I'm listening to you.
Oh, I was just letting you know that staff are documenting, taking notes on your concerns. So if you don't have any new points, I'd like to just, there's another member in the gallery that I'd like to ask if they have some questions.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Jackie.
Yep. Thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Very welcome. Who do we have?
Leanne Stackles, I think I'm pronouncing it.
So next up is Leanne. If you're able to turn your video on, that would be appreciated, and just state your name and your address, please.
My video on.
Heard
Hi
something.
there, can you hear me?
Yes, a little quiet, but we can hear you.
Okay, hang on a second. I just got to figure out how to change my
That's way
video.
better.
Okay, awesome. And video, can you see me now?
Nope,
Oh, shit.
I don't know how important.
All right, hang on a sec. You might not get me.
Everyone's.
It's okay.
Okay, hang on a sec here. Integrated main. Okay. There?
Sorry.
Not yet.
No, yeah, it's fine, Leanne. I think
Okay.
we'll just put your name
So-
and address and
Yeah, so Leanne Anastasakos, I'm at 4658 Side Road 10 North. I am adjacent to the applicant's location where they want to complete this work. I just want to change direction a little bit here because we're talking a lot about the soil and we're talking a lot about different things. We're talking about the trucks, we're talking about mud, dirt, whatnot. My question is I did hear throughout the presentation that we talked a little bit about a proposal that a house is to be built. Is this something that's already been submitted for? Is this something that is proposal as in they want to segregate more land to build other houses on top of this? Are we talking about multiple? Because the applicant has already built exactly on our property line, which is extremely frustrating because we built our property in the country so that we could have peace and quiet. We don't have that. The house is terribly messy. There's junk all over the place. It is now a rental in both of the units that are there. So I guess my biggest concern is if there's a proposal for houses to be built and then severance is to be required after the fact, is this going to become a rental property per se? So is my house now going to be backing on to a townhouse complex full of rentals, basically, is what I'm asking. There's an ulterior motive here, and I'm not sure if everybody's getting that. I don't want to be ignorant, but, you know, and I see you nodding and I appreciate that, but as the community, we're here to protect each other and what we stand for. You did make a comment, Mayor, in regards to the fact that, do you want to have this happen now with the soil coming in, or if you want to happen in the future? So are you referring to the fact that this is never going to not go away? Or are you referring to the fact that at some point this is going to be approved? It may not be by you, but it may be by somebody else. That's what I heard. I don't know if you want to comment on that and kind of reiterate what your thought process was. I know that one of the other members did allude to the fact that they were not going to take no for an answer as far as it's not acceptable to not do anything on this property. And I understand that. And I'm all for people making money and rental properties and investments. I'm all for that, if it's done in proper manner and if it's not affecting the people around you. We live in the country. And this is really unfortunate that I have somebody that's right on my property line and I'm pissed. Like, I can't sit outside without looking at my neighbor. I want to put a fence up now because I don't have a choice. I'm looking at them. And I also thought that the intent of that person building, the applicant building that property, was that they were to live in it. So they did live in it for 1 year. And then they vacated and now we're renting the upper part of the shop as well as the house that's there. So a little frustrated to say the least. So if this is the intent going forward, and I'm just assuming because that's what we're seeing right now, if this is the intent, then I would strongly suggest that the council make an executive decision that is appropriate to what the community is looking for. I don't want to live in another community. That's why I moved out here. If I have to sell my house because somebody's putting in rental properties throughout, I'm not going to be very happy, and neither is the rest of your community. So as you, as the council, make your decisions, I think that you really need to strongly take that into consideration.
All right, Leon, I'll try to unpack this. Firstly, I don't believe I've heard any other council member make a comment about this application other than myself.
Okay.
I take those liberties. When I was speaking about, you know, the term of the permit, I wasn't speaking in the sense of a non-decision now and proverbial punting this to you know, another iteration of council. What I was trying to get feedback on is there's going to be impacts in the community because it's going to be truck. Is it, if approved, is it more desirable to the residents affected to have the impact in a short window or a longer window? Is it, so for example, say it's 44,000 cubic meters. There's a math equation you can figure out. I'm not saying you, I just mean in general.
I get it.
Axle dump truck carries X. That's how many thousands of loads? Do you want it in 2 years or do you want it in 5 or do you want it in 10? That's the kind of pulse on the community I would like some feedback on, because
Sure.
recognizing there's impacts. I'm more built of give it to me all, get it done, be gone.
And I agree with that.
So that's
So
where
for
I'm
your,
looking
for
at.
you looking for an opinion from us, I do agree with that if this is approved. But if this is approved and there's an ulterior motive here, which I strongly, and not only me, but others in this room, as well as in the community, believe there is, then I think that as the council, you need to protect your township from these.
So I still want to unpack
Yep.
the remainder of your comments, and I have very much so been a champion as well as and the support from this council for residential growth in the township, and that includes severances. I have put a lot, and it doesn't matter, it's my job. I have put a tremendous amount of effort into getting more severances within the township. I do not differentiate between owners and renters.
That's unfortunate.
Well, and I'm gonna choose my words.
Yes, you might want to.
Yes, there's a lot of need for different styles of housing within even this community. For example, I was told recently a lot sold for $900,000 for the dirt. You still need to put a house on it. That is not affordable for young families, new married couples to come to this community. And that is a detriment too, because of our minor ball, our soccer. I'm getting on a tangent, but.
Yeah, I get that.
feel these, so to me, whether it's a rental or not, as long as it's permissive in the zoning, that's a non-issue. Now, you did mention concerns around the tidiness or lack of the property. We do have a
Yep.
property standards bylaw.
Yep.
This council supported hiring multiple iterations of bylaw officers. We now have a full-time excellent bylaw officer. I believe we're bringing on a second one in September. There's things available to you that you can utilize if you have concerns with the property standards, and those could be addressed. So if there's going to, and I'll talk to the townhouses. Generally speaking, in the rural zoning rules, townhouse complexes, can't be supported on private service as well and septic, so the likelihood of that happening is next to zero. We do have ARUs, accessory residential units, so if a lot were created, you can build a house, you can build a smaller house near it, or vice versa, you could build, doesn't matter, chicken or the egg comes first. But one is only has a prescribed size compared to the original home. You could have 2 units, and those could be rentals. These are all permissive uses within the zoning bylaws. So for me, whether the applicant is going to apply for a severance after all this work is done, doesn't affect my decision, because I've been a champion for more severances. Because of many reasons. And again, whether or not it's going to be a full rental house or have an ARU, as long as it's complying to the zoning, then I'm comfortable. But, so, I hope that helps answer some of your questions on the rental and on the, getting tired, property standards.
Yeah, it does. It's unfortunate, and you know, I thought moving to Push Lynch was going to be better, and I'm not hearing that, and that's really unfortunate. You
Sorry to hear
referenced a $900,000 lot being sold, which is fantastic, which is, I'm sure, you know, an inheritance that was given to the applicant is, you know, building on, and it doesn't matter about personal information and costs. But the rental units that are there are great for now until they become run down, and then they're not, you know, bringing in the value. So now we, as well as Valerie and Trevor, who are in the audience, have to look at these houses that are going to be built. I know it is. It's just, you know, a matter of time. It's not been approved, I'm sure, but I know that's the goal here. It's just unfortunate. And I didn't mean townhouses in reference to actually physical townhouses. I meant a number of these small dwellings that could then be rented out. And, you know, like I said, I'm all for making money, but don't infringe on my property with,
Well, I have
you
a
know,
question for you.
yeah.
What size of property do you live on? How big is your property?
Oh, I don't know. It's quite large.
Acre, two?
It's an acre.
Okay, so your
the acreage is not
property-
large, yeah.
No, okay, so your property where you live.
Yep.
Was separate. So that
Nope.
you could come to this community, right? So.
Nope.
This
This house, we bought the property as
is.
is. Nothing was severed. We bought the property.
But
We
it
bought the
was
house.
severed at some point. That's how we come to this community. So I just struggle with that, you know, trying to bring that into the conversation, the approval, because most of us,
So-
even myself,
Okay.
I live on a severance.
So you tell me, you come to my house, I'm happy to have you here so you can see what I'm talking about. You come to my house, you build this big, beautiful house. We absolutely love it. We think it's our future, you know, retirement home. We have our in-laws here, which have been supportive of, you know, the township has been supportive of that as well. It's fantastic. It's a win-win for us. It's a win-win for the aging community. But you get this Yahoo next door. Apologies to the applicant if you're in the audience, but that's how I feel. That builds right on my property line. And doesn't just builds this tiny little dinky house that does not reflect the neighborhood. Like, come on, like at least have something that's comparable to look at. Because now you're looking at my house and you look at this guy's next door and you're like, what the hell? It's an eyesore. And I know you have no control over that, but you need to hear our frustrations as well as the community. Right?
But if the property standards are problematic, I highly suggest there's a online.
We've done it already and nothing's been done.
Yeah, I'm not privy to bylaw enforcement, so, I know that Jacob does an excellent job, and, if there is infractions, they will be dealt with. So, I'm not going to ask staff if there's an active investigation. You can follow up with staff on that. That gets problematic too. They can't, you know, they can't can't tell you, the details, but, if there was an enforcement and it's been resolved, there's nothing prohibiting you from seeing new developments and bringing those concerns, because we do want a nice township to live in. So,
Absolutely, and I agree.
And, okay, so back to, is there any other components of the application around, you know, the details of the application that you have concerns with that don't involve, you know, the severances or the type of growth that may come to a future lot?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, well, thank you for participating tonight. I appreciate it.
See any other input online?
Okay, we've not given council, an opportunity to. Before I go to council, Kathy, we're not gonna revisit everything that we spoke to before, right?
No.
Perfect. I just wanna give council a little chance.
Was trying to get it all out.
It's all good. It's all good.
And there was some,
I might get you to stand up, cause it is easier to hear you.
you know what, I'm just about, I'd like to sit, cause I was.
Okay, fine.
shaky
Just,
standing.
yep, no problem.
So. What's different about this is that it's not under an ARA license. And this has been my wish.
You want the importation under the ARA license?
No,
Oh.
this has been my wish, that the municipality has a say. And the big difference between this and the ARA license being filled, like the gravel pits being filled while they're still licensed, is that municipality has an opportunity to look at the siting of this filter. So under the license, the pit's there, it's gonna be filled because they apply for a site plan amendment and in it comes to that hole there. No one has. You have an opportunity now to say, is this an appropriate site for the importation of fill? Not a pit, nothing to do with the pit anymore, as you're saying. However, if it hadn't been a pit, wouldn't be in the mess that it's in right now. And there was an obligation to return it to agricultural use. Whether it actually gets there ever or not, I don't know.
Yeah, we're cropping it.
But this is your chance to decide whether this is an appropriate site. Considering the neighbors, the neighborhood, the traffic through the township. And like I was trying to say before, the natural heritage features around this site, the hydrogeology of the site, it's on a groundwater divide. Part goes up to the Speed River, part goes to the Irish Creek. It's a sensitive area. It's mapped as a sensitive area. It's a groundwater recharge area. Is this an appropriate place for a fill dump? Okay, this is my wish that you have a chance to say no. And I'm so disappointed, and I understand that, you can't fight every fight, but it's unfortunate when my council has to say that it will just cost too much money to fight everything. And so the other side then can just run all over here knowing that we're not gonna fight that. Because it costs too much, and that is a very sad situation in the province, provincially, if you're robbing a jewelry store or dumping illegally, which has apparently happened at this site. So there's a history here as well. And I suffered through that myself, even though I'm not a neighbor, I'm still a resident that put up all that truck traffic. So one thing that I wanted to bring up as well is the air quality, and the residents here are talking about the dust. So we have more information now than we've ever had on the effects of small airborne particles on the health and the ongoing cardiovascular health even of the residents who live near constant sources of dust for PM 2.5, PM 10, particularly. They will be breathing this, sounds like constantly, the way this has been going. Dumping or the dust suppressant on that site as well. It was suggested previously, didn't say water. The only thing, because a commercial dust suppressant that could contaminate the groundwater, which then flows to the wetlands. So I have to agree with John McNee. I live in Puslinch. I've had my gravel pit fight. There are a lot of holes in Puslinch to fill. And this is just one of them. There are holes that are licensed, and there's abandoned holes, and there's holes that are licensed. It's been listened to. Are we looking at filling the University of Guelph pit at some point? Because you can dump below the water table. You can, we have quarry applications. I look at the ERO every weekend, every Saturday. We have applications for millions of tons for quarries in Niagara. There's one right now going through in Caledon where the property has actually been sold. So these properties will be bought up by people who want to fill that hole. This is just the beginning. And I suggest that you look very, very carefully at the siting of this and maybe find some way to say no. And that's why I brought up all of those environmental concerns, the hydrogeology, the wetlands, the stream, the groundwater divide, and the proximity to the residents, and the health of the residents, and the safety of the residents. I have had someone go through that stop sign on, it's a dangerous intersection to begin with. But that's what I have to say, and I think I wanted to just sum it up. And it's up to you this time, it's not up to the MNR.
I agree with that. So, thank you.
I just have one comment, it sort of follows through on what Kathy's saying, that, you know, this property is my understanding, it's owned agricultural now, it's owned agricultural now.
Yeah.
Well, then filling it for 3 years is actually an industrial, is that not an industrial use as opposed to a filling, they're not gonna plant anything for 3 years, are they? So is it really gonna be an agricultural site anymore, or should you be putting an interim industrial zoning on it if you decide to pass it, so at least you get more tax dollars compensated for the damage to the roads, to the damage to the residents?
Well, the township either will be or has received a security for any road impacts from the hauling, with the intent of drawing on that to repair them. I believe the applicant was speaking to, I should let you answer because it's not my application. You spoke about having some crops planted on portions of the property as you build it out, so speak to that because what I'm hearing from the applicant is that this is for better farming, right? Not a industrial. So if that's the case, you can speak to how this site's gonna progress through the filling of it.
Yeah, I think, I can't speak to zoning issues and things like that. I have, experience in the development world to speak to that. I think, you know, you can't you're not gonna zone it back. So you'd be, you just would have, made a massive step backwards, if you did that, but anyways, but the idea would be that the work zone would be zoned to the area that they're working in, not to, for a number of reasons, right? For erosion protection, for dust, minimization, and obviously the use of the site is desired as an income source, so it's proactive for them to do it. So basically the plan is to do it in a zoned manner and not to strip the entire site in one shot.
So if it's not clear, it's zoned where it'll be continued to farming at each section, so go ahead.
But as a follow-up, if you're going to return it back to agriculture, how are you gonna return it back to agriculture? Depending on what type of fill you bring in.
Well, it's gonna be topsoil, the
But you
table.
they've already said there's not enough topsoil to build the site, where are you gonna get that much topsoil from the province? But just to say one thing is whatever is underneath the topsoil is also important for growing things, it's not just up so many meters of topsoil. If you don't have infiltration or you have too much, there are floods or whatever, then you can't grow anything, or you'll still have poor crops growing on. So is there any way that you could, if you do intend to pass this, that you could, like, you have the different stratums of type of soils that can be brought in, correct? Can you limit the types of soils that can be brought into the site?
Honest?
Yeah, as far as the geotechnical, like, grain size analysis, if it's a sand, gravel, mixture of clay, silt, whatnot, yeah, you have a choice. Typically not really. You want to have stratified layer, you don't want to have layers, that really, it's not very conducive for the ground infiltration. You want to have a good mixture of fines and coarse material. And this is why the ministry, imposed this 1.5 meter minimum for topsoil or table 1 soil. It doesn't have to be topsoil, it has to be table 1. Because that's the root zone for most of the plants. And that's sufficient to sustain the growth. It's sufficient for, if you have, let's say, clay subsoil, the 1.5 meters would be plenty or enough for infiltration to dissipate, so you don't create a swamp. The water will be sitting in the bathtub kind of situation. And proponent, based on application, they'll be grading them for the runoff. So it's not to create a big wall when the water is gonna accumulate. The water is gonna run off, there'll be some infiltration. Again, there's a lot of science behind it. It's not that this proponent, all the other proponents come up with some plans that they just figure something out, it's gonna work for them. They gotta follow a book. There's a rule book, it's called actually Soil Rules Book. And it's all spelled out how it has to be done. And these are the minimum requirements. There's always potential to go, do better job, but the bare minimum is good enough to the government, to the province, for the development of the properties that receive excess soil.
Okay, so I don't believe we have any. Right, go ahead.
Oh, about the illegal dumping, if we turn this down, will there be illegal dumping on the site? Is that what we're afraid of with the illegal dumping? Or illegal dumping in other pits, is that what we're worried about?
So through Mr. Chair, the council is tasked with making a decision based on the merits of this application. That's what they'll be making a decision on. And so that should answer the question. It's not based on any sort of presumption around what an applicant will or will not do, based on that decision.
All right, I want him on the record that I'm totally against it.
Yeah. So these are my parents here. I just wanted to give my opinion on it too.
Can I just pause you real quick? I'm
Yeah.
making an assumption that you're an adult. And I may need your name and your address just for the record, because like if you were under 18, I'll take your statement, but as if you're 18 and over, then you're participating in this meeting, we need to document it that way. If whatever process later, you're officially on the record, so.
No, I'm under 18.
Okay, then I think we can just should we take her name and?
Yeah, just permissions from the legal guardian to state her name and address.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I live at 67454 Forestell Road, and my name is Bianca Garni. I'm a little nervous.
It's
speaking
good,
up.
it's fine. I'm nervous almost every meeting.
Yeah. I'm in civics and careers class right now, so I'm learning about this stuff, and I kind of just wanted to give my opinion too. But I would like to bring it back to the dust, and I understand that they'll do their best to minimize it, but my concern is that on hot summer nights, the water will evaporate, and if it's windy whatsoever, the dust will blow straight into our backyard. And when it's hot, sometimes I like to open my window because I live upstairs and heat rises, it gets really hot up there. So when there was construction before, all the dust would blow into my room, and it was just a pain. So my concern is that it'll be really dusty and I'm gonna have to clean a lot more. And also, I would say, like, I'm currently 16. I plan to go to university in like 2 years. I only have like 2 years left at our house because I'm probably gonna go into residence somewhere. And I don't want those 2 years to be full of like trucks in the summer and stuff. And I'd hope to have like a nice summer where there's no noise waking me up. And I also wanted to say that I'm working, I'm doing summer school. So I think sleep is very important for also a developing mind. And it's not just me, it's also the neighbors' children too. So I think that would also be a big factor that would affect other kids. And yeah, I think that's basically all I wanted to say.
Great job. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of them, especially strangers, and speak to, your concerns. So continue on with that. And how do we control dust on site? Is it as simple as just a water truck, or as the individual was mentioning, soil dries out? Like, how is there? Do you top dress it? Like, what do you do to?
We use the water truck during the operating hours that were there to keep the ground wet. It's no different than a farm field that's just been tilled, right? Like, they can't control it, we can't control it. After the hours, nobody's there.
What's the site condition right now? Is it spring planting? I guess had a crop on it last fall. So you said it's gonna be staged. Is the whole site gonna be stripped, but then on rehabilitated, there's gonna, even the stripping's gonna be.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, you're not gonna strip, right, you do it in a manner only on the zone that you're gonna be able to work on in the next day or two. And so it's, you're doing,
So, I don't know if you have an answer to this, would it, do you envision, stripping 5 acres, if what would a zone, would zone be, would it be dependent on the source site and how much material you're getting?
Yeah, like, I think the farmer has half pit planted now, I believe, there we gave him an area where we're going to work. So we'll do it the back section and work our way forwards on the. So it wouldn't all be stripped, it'll be stripped enough for the trucks to have to get on, right?
So if it gives you some comfort, if this project were to go forward, you're not gonna see a full exposure of your neighbor's property as dirt. Sounds as though they're going to stage this, progress it through. And then we heard earlier where once they're completed on those other stages, well, depending on the time of year, but crop would be planted, so hopefully that would also help mitigate some of the concerns, but it's noted and I'll discuss it at council at a later date. All right, sorry. Okay.
I have one.
Yeah, but sure, go ahead.
That we haven't addressed is invasive species, plants and animals. So we have some very serious invasive worms, hammerhead worms. I actually read about it in Cottage Life magazine. I had heard of them. These are being transported around the province in soil and mulch. And they showed up at Port Sandfield in the very, high end area of Muskoka in gardens. So any of these times that we move himself from one place for another, we have Phragmites, which is now in the little trash. And this whole hammerhead worm thing is in jumping worms. Apparently we have those so these are all things that are showing up. And so I'm wondering with the hammerhead worms, because they're so toxic, if, even robins eating them will die because we can't touch them. We have to wash our hands. They're extremely toxic to animals. So dogs and any other animals touch me. And I think it's worth looking at. I'm not trying to be, out there. I just happened to pick up this article in Cottage Life and I thought, wow, they're already up in Port Sandfield in gardens and they're saying it's importing topsoil and mulch. So it's something to always keep in mind. It's not just chemicals that are moving around. It's invasives and dangerous animals and seeds.
Okay. Small other hands up on the day you leave. There. All right, so we'll move to council. Councilor Hurst, any items?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I got lots of notes. So to the residents, thank you for coming out tonight, folks. These aren't always easy conversations, but they impact your livelihood. So I appreciate you taking the time to come out tonight. I live in concession 4, right on the corner of Side Road 12. So I'm not that far away from where you guys. I walk my dog down that road all the time in summer, so I get it. I don't live there per se, but I think I get it. Yeah, just some comments. I think I quite struggle with this being a commercial fill operation cloaked as agriculture. And this is on either of you. You're here trying to move forward with this, and I get that, but just based on prior history, I think there's a sense of unease with the circumstance as it presents itself. So again, not on either of you, very good job of answering a lot of questions, but I think from a community standpoint, that's a huge hurdle to have to get over. Maybe 2 comments briefly. In the briefing notes, I didn't see anything in regards to commentary from source water protection. That would be one. I'll leave that with staff just to contemplate, or hard environmental, the hydro folks. And I suspect that wasn't a requirement, but I think just the fact that in this community water, everybody's on wells. Like, that to me is concerning. Road management. I'm just envisioning through the proposed haul route I envision a major issue at the corner of Forrestal and Side Road 10. Cars whip down Forrestal and you're trying to get a dump truck or one with a pump at the back across there. I just envision like a really bad accident here. So that's maybe just a takeaway is, and again, I don't want to get into road management. That's beyond the scope here, but maybe a four-way stop there temporarily just for, and again, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying something that needs to be considered. Mr. Nichols, just my quick math, and I don't want to put you in the spot here, but 145,000 cubic meters, like we're probably talking 10 to 12,000 trucks, roughly. Okay. So I just kind of work backwards, say, and if this happened over 2 years, it's 5,000 trucks-ish. Say 200 working days, it's like 25 to 30 trucks given, and that's not taking into consideration, as you noted, rain days, holidays, winter weather issues and that type of stuff. So that's a lot of trucks coming through that small window. I probably do have concerns with the operating hours. I think I would very much support the township's recommendation of Monday to Friday. And I think maybe I'm encouraged that you gave some context in terms of how you choose to operate your business, which is encouraging. But I think from my perspective, I want to see that in writing type of thing.
Yeah.
Talked a lot about sound and dust management. I think in other construction sites, we've seen tarping put up around the perimeters to keep the dust down. And again, that's probably more in the site plan control, but I'd say became quite evident to me the concerns of the adjacent neighbors. I think water's great, but I'd probably look for water and something in the course of time just to help mitigate that. I'll stop there. Thank you for polling, though. I think you answered a lot of the somewhat difficult questions. I appreciate that.
That's great.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate what Councilor Hurst said. Thank you very much to the residents and to the people online who have out tonight and made some very thoughtful and very well researched comments. It's helpful. I can speak for myself. It's very helpful for me as we move forward. Councilor Hurst made a lot of really great comments. I won't reiterate those. I do just have a couple clarification questions. At the very beginning, you mentioned that this would go on for 2 to 3 construction seasons. And I'm not familiar with what is a construction season? Like, does it go from May to October? Or what would a typical construction season entail?
I'm not sure what your, the tonnage road or the half load season on those roads are there. I think 10 south of there is a tonnage road, so it would shut down for 2 months of the year, no matter what, for trucking as well. Yeah, it depends how much rain we get. We usually will take another couple weeks off, This season we started late again, so you can get, and you got holidays and everything, like you're talking 9 months. Between everything, yeah.
And I'm just wondering, you talked about the sort of zoning or staging, or I'm not sure what the correct terminology is, but if this were to be approved, is there a way that those zoning or staging of the work could be done in such a way to minimize the dust for the adjacent, specifically those that back on to the property, that would get either a lot of the work done near them, either at the very beginning or the very end, so that they can still at least enjoy their.
Jen, we can't hear you, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. My question was about sort of the order of staging the work or zoning your work so that the residents that back onto the property can have the majority of the work done closest to them, either at the beginning of the construction season or the end of the construction season, so that during the prime summer months, you're less impacted by dust during that time.
I mean, you can absolutely do it that way, and even in the winter time, you'll have less dust as well, because the moist and everything, but that makes a good point. We can work at different sections, yeah, that's absolutely a possibility.
I don't have any other questions at this point, but thank you very much. For great information and I'll be answering questions.
So I'd like to reiterate what the councillor said. Thank you for coming out to the public and online. So a very contentious issue and we're trying to get something that works for everybody. We may not succeed, but our attempt is to make something that works for all of us. So with respect to the final use of this being an agricultural property, what sort of crops were you planning to plant on this site?
I cannot speak to that. All I'm told is it's for agricultural use and I'm doing the engineering, so.
I can speak to that, not specifically in profession, but I know Mike Weber is the farmer that's been planting crops since 2021. And he's been alternating corn and soy, I believe, and I think it was only the two. And there is a crop in there right now in a section, I would describe it as 2/3 of the property. I don't believe it's corn, but it has sprouted, and that's what I mean, I can't speak to it professionally, but yeah, there's been crops every year since 2021. And the yield has not been good. We're working to improve that and
So follow-up question is, our consultant Thomas has raised a point that if you want proper growth, you should comply with the soils rule book. In other words, you can have a type of soil, different types of soil, different depths to allow for drainage. Has that sort of analysis been done to determine what types of soils you want at each level?
Because as you said, the 1.5 meters of topsoil is the depth of the root for most agriculture use. So anything below that grade there, the water's gonna hit and then run off. So there's no point of putting anything softer that far up. It gets, absorbs too much water. That's,
We'll just elaborate on that point. I thought you were saying that you want a degradation of 1.5 meter for proper drainage.
Well, there are no requirements for gradation for the soil. So there's no this prescription that the soil has to have specific fraction of silt, clay, the fine particles versus the coarse particles. That's not part of the soil rules. It's the quality of the soil. So that tables 1 through 9 really just speak to chemical content of soil. It is better if the soil is a mixture. It's a poorly sorted, well graded, so meaning it's basically a mixture of all the sizes from a groundwater flow or drainage standpoint. Proponent could use, depending on the source, the soil. Like right now, I understand from application that the source sites have not been found yet, that this is still either being determined or not. So it all depends on what type of soil they have access to.
So that's back to you. Are you trying to use topsoil for your crop and have input?
they have to. Well, sorry, I'm sorry. No, you're right. I mean, it's table 1, sorry, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and the planned use is for agriculture, so.
All right, the application cites 3 properties that you're considering to import fill from. One is 20,000 cubic meters, another is just under 2,000, another is 200. It seems like you're not going to a big site to try to get as much possible as done in as early time as possible. You're sort of shopping around. Is that, will that improve later on, or you're just strictly?
we have a lot of reports, but because of the process that Beaver Township goes through with all this reporting and stuff in the timeline, I can give you reports today, but we don't start in 6 months, they're gone. So I don't want to waste your council time, my money that has to be invested into them going through the reports and then changing the bylaw or changing the permit. Every time I hand a report in, I have to pay and change the permit. So when the site gets, that's when we'll search. So you guys want reports to show you, we showed you that we had them, provided them to you, but I can't guarantee and say that site's gonna hold on to 20,000, 200,000 cubes. It's just not the way it works. And when we're ready to go, I can find those sites, bigger sites and volume it that way. But again, it's about like, do we want it super busy and run 500 trucks a day? No, not really. That's a nightmare. It's a lot. Most of my sites now, even with 15,000 loads, we run 125 loads a day. That's like it's not crazy. I know it sounds like a lot of trucks, but if you see what goes now out of the quarry, it's more manageable.
That's about, how much per hour, about 20 trucks
I'm sorry?
About 20 trucks an hour?
Yeah, they usually come in rounds, right? So they could come from 3 hours away, so they do 3 rounds a day. So you see them all and you won't see them for 3 hours.
Noise levels, residents are concerned about the noise levels. Is there anything you can do on site to mitigate the noise from the backup operations or?
We try now to, our guys slamming the tailgates, we're pretty much on them. We're in 2 smaller areas now. We let them slam it once and everyone gets warned, like, I don't want them driving down the site, banging the tailgates away. My guys are pretty hard on that as well. Guys get so many warnings and then we mark it down in our books and then just sign the truck out.
In terms of dust control, I hear what you're saying, and I heard what Councilor Herzler said. I think we should have better control of dust to consider the impact on residents.
So I think the challenge with Dustin, so we actually ironically within most municipalities now where there is land development construction within sites, or sorry, within residential areas, they have to do dust management plan. So that the municipalities have rolled some of those measures out with basically the tarps and the things like that. It's my understanding, this is anecdotal, is that some municipalities are basically moving away from that because it's not effective. A site that's this large, you think of a construction activity operating 100 meters away, you put up even a 5-meter fence, it doesn't really do anything. It's way too far away, right? And what ends up happening is that ends up becoming more of a nuisance. So there's been concerns about, in this case, the wildlife, things like that. So I think, in my opinion, it would be an expense that would actually have negative impacts. It's not actually visually attractive. And I think it would have actually almost no measurable impact. The bigger thing is going to be the daily construction activities of water, of minimizing the construction zone, minimizing the disturbance zone, and maximizing the reinstatement zone. And I think it is worth noting again, it is an agricultural use. So much of the time in the spring and the fall, and even during when there's crop cover, there is still dust that can come from, and it is open soil still, right? It's not like a lawn where it's fully vegetated. So I think there's some reasonableness and some reality of what the effectiveness of it would actually be.
Yes, there's a home on the property, correct, right now?
I'm not 100% about that, maybe.
There's dwelling on that property and then there's a adjacent one.
So are people, will they be living in there while the construction's going on?
I haven't asked that question. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, that's all I have. There's a lot here that adjust, and I think what this report comes to council will be a lot of recommendations coming forward from us with respect to what sort of additional safeguards we want.
I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, but it gives me a little more comfort knowing that those source sites that you provided were just examples, because you had those are 3 that were at either or were available. But I have concerns when I read the report, testing and mix up the address. The one was topsoil, I believe, in Rotterdam.
Sure.
And they had the contractor show up, dig a hole, and to say 3 meters, test it. Now, first I heard of, you can take samples to get different results, but then in the report it states they go back and they check 2 meters around that site, and then they conclude that it was a localized contamination. Well, to me, why wouldn't you replicate the same testing methodology? Why didn't they bring the excavator back, dig 3 feet down someone? I'm like, dig 3 feet down, put in a report that you mimicked exactly what we did the first time, and then we got a clean result. Because when I read something like that, I'm like, that's not the same process. This looks like they just walked around the outside and grabbed some stuff and now we got a clean fill. But if you dig down 3 meters, it's dirty. So I had major concerns with the 3 submissions that you provided because I thought the more the process, because if I can see variances, then it brings doubt. Then it brings, do we want this fill in our community, right? So that would be my suggestion to you then. If you're gonna bring source sites and there's gonna be a report about testing, and they go back to test it, you mimic the same methodology, unless there's some great explanation of why not to, because I didn't think it was clear, and I could be wrong, I'm no expert. The other one was, it was the parking lot expansion, was it Grimsby area down there somewhere?
Okay.
It was industrial area, and they dug 11 inches down with a shovel. And to me, I'm thinking, this is a massive industrial area that was site prepped. And the 11 inches that they tested, was that the topsoil they put on? And are you only looking to bring 11 inches of soil for that project to this community because it's just a scrape and pave? Or are they going to dig down 3 feet? They're going to test the top 11 inches.
So usually there's multiple tests in that. If they're trying to get rid of the topsoil and they're splitting it off, they're not gonna sample all the way down because they don't need it. They're gonna sample the top, whatever it is, they're gonna dig down until they hit the topsoil bed. They're testing that only because they're gonna get rid of that. And then there's more testing that's gonna come back and test the rest of the subsoils and everything beneath it. So that's how they're doing it. It's their test. And same in the stockpile. That's why they're gonna test it on the ground, but once it's moved, they're gonna test it again in a stockpile. And it has to be shown as that.
Okay.
And you'll see the boreholes and the number of them. Usually there won't be one, there'll be 10 or 20 or 30. So
I'm
you
just
have to
telling
read
you
all of
from the guy that's sitting here that is not living in your world.
them.
And I'm responsible for making decisions, or partially responsible, 1/5
Sure.
responsible for making this decision. If I don't have confidence in the reports that I'm reading, I'm gonna bring a ton of scrutiny to you.
I understand. That's why this guy's here.
So I'm just, that was my take on these 3 source sites. But it also, as I mentioned earlier, it brings me some comfort knowing that those aren't necessarily the sites. It's just that you had to provide something for us to at least consider as part of the process. I also am wanting to know what would be better for the community if this is approved. And I've already said a couple times, whether we want, high impact, get it done, get crops on it, or extend that. So for me, there's gonna be some thoughts on that decision making. I didn't buy into the truck's gonna come empty, go to a site, because to me, the gravel company has contracted these trucks, and then how are they gonna agree to let that truck go somewhere else? So I don't know if that's gonna
Can I
actually work.
answer that? He said it wrong when he was saying it.
So let me finish though, because to the way he described it, I thought that would be like, hey man, you going to Pusslinch? I got this stuff that's gotta go with you. Okay, but the whole, if we adhere to what's prescribed in the application, the testing, the logging, that should be caught. But I'll give you,
So let's say Condrain is doing a strip job. Okay, they gotta put roads in while they're doing, they got multiple crews going. Their sites are looking for, if they're coming to me, they're looking, your quarries out here are cheaper than Lafarge and Highway 5, a lot cheaper. The further north they go, the cheaper they are too, and they know this. They own strata. So they bring loads to us, but then they'll backhaul, sometimes 30% of those loads will be backhaul gravel. Cause they gotta bring it back to the site anyways. So it's cheaper for them to do that turn. That's how it is.
I just had concerns around the ad hoc, we got an empty truck,
That's
rip over here.
was not my intention.
I know, but, the hours working, this is a double-edged sword. I don't support it this time, just Saturday work. However, a mechanism for the on-site machinery prepping, I would, look at that as, a farmer's tractor could be in the field. So if a dozer, do they have backup beepers are worst, right?
Well, ours are. It's muffled, you can say.
Okay, but
So.
so
They're unplugged.
I'd be more tolerable to some prep work to, if it shortened the scope of the duration of the project. But the trucking 6 days a week, I don't know if I can support that.
We don't run Saturday.
Yeah.
We never have. Just don't.
But there's actually 2 separate times.
Okay.
There's a haul route time and there's a site work time. So the permit relates to the site work and the haul route has already been approved with the regular hours.
Okay, so I missed that, but I mean, it's
Okay.
been a bit of a conversation, so. I'm almost done. I apologize. This is important. I'm looking at, page 23 of our agenda package. There's a, did you say you prepared the site plan elevations? Was that your?
The grading design?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we have this graph and it's got all the rainbow colors
Oh,
on it.
yeah.
And, I'm seeing the, existing and the proposed elevations. So. Is this the proposed elevation will then receive 1.5 meters of topsoil? So this is inclusive
It's fine. Final grade.
okay. So my question to you then, would it be a safe assumption that anything on this plan under 1.5 meters is gonna be table 1 soils brought in? Because all of these proposed grade increases, the ones I'm talking about are, a majority of them are under the 1.5 meters. It looks like there's a giant hole, I know the property, it's a hole in the middle.
Yep.
So
That would be correct.
that'd be correct. So if somebody were good at math, you could likely figure out how much is going to be table 2 versus. So
Yes.
now, if you're at, say, looks like the west side, you're at 2.86, I guess this question. You're gonna do 1.5 meters across the whole site. Essentially, like, I mean, I'm not gonna get out there with a freaking laser level and see if you're 1.4, 1, but. I mean, let's just say 1.5 meters across the whole site. So any elevation change that is more than the 1.5 meters, that balance will be the table 2 point, whatever.
Correct.
Okay. I agree. I prefer, I don't like the 200 loads from here, 200 loads from there, or 10 loads or 5 loads from here. I would prefer, if this thing's gonna go, get it done, because it's for agricultural purposes. It's not a soil commercial operation. Get it done. That's where I'm leaning, but I need to hear from the public if that's even palatable. So, and it's gonna be a tough decision for anybody. So I have a few more notes. I'm horrible for this. I still step all the time. Let me find my notes. Oh, I think staff have answered this, but in several parts of the report, it makes this disclaimer that if the applicant were to go over 144,000 cubic meters, whatever the measurement is, then we'll just post it on the ERO. There's controls in place, but that can't happen. This is the cap, right? Okay. I already talked about the 12 inches. I had contaminated soils, so I didn't like the testing. I thought there was contaminated soils. Oh. It's gonna be a log of the trucks coming in. I would like staff to take some consideration on the reporting of those logs if it's not already in there. It's in there.
So you can share, it's something staff will consider as a conditioner.
So I don't know if quarterly is too frequent, but for me, it's a measure of keeping you honest. Right? You're gonna have that log of trucks. If some, member of the community says they brought in way more, I could sit down one night and add her up. In plain terms, right? So I think that reporting is important. Whether it's every 6 months, whatever, everybody can hash that out. That's all I have. Oh, I had a note of, like a truck camera to track trucks in and out too, but I don't know if that would be probably like a trail camera, similar idea somehow to, again, another
Watch
level. Well, I don't know, but so dust is important. Those are my points. Those are my points, and I think I can leave that. Appreciate your time. I'm pragmatic at time. You know what I'm thinking. I'm a pretty straight shooter, so I apologize if I, seem too brass, but I just want to get to the point and talk about it. I like having the difficult discussions. It's important. The community gets to hear it, of course, and work through these things. So I did hear from staff and others that this was a very well done application. It was eye burning to read through it. Especially not being an expert at any of these things, but it was very well done. And so thank you for that, going through that process. And then I guess that'll be it. And I got a little blurb I have to read that, this council after my long ladder there has any, nope. Okay. I declare this public meeting closed. Council will take no action on the proposal tonight. Staff will be reporting at a later date with a recommendation for council's consideration. If you wish to receive further notification of this proposal, please email or call building@plissontch.ca or by phone at 519-763-1226, extension 1, or contact township staff during regular business hours. Only those persons who leave their names will be provided further notification. If you wish to speak to the proposal when it is brought before council in the future, you must register as a delegation with the municipal clerk prior to the meeting. Thank you for everyone's patience and indulgence, and have a great rest of your evening.